Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may happen to be, and whether you're watching live or archived. And welcome to another in the Nautel Transmission Talk Tuesday webinar series. This, I've been informed, is number 17 that we've done so far, and knock on wood, I haven't made too big an error yet, we hope. If you find one, call me on it. Maybe we'll have to issue a contest. I've got some really cool guests today, an interesting topic. One of the things you always hear about is HD is expensive. And, you know, I may or may not be the bearer of a couple of jokes along those lines, of course, myself over the years. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been done since the inception of the technology to bring the costs down. And I've got two really great friends and excellent people with me today. I've got the Senior Manager for Broadcast Services from Xperi, Donna Detweiler. Donna, hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
And on the other half of the Team Detweiler, I like that, Donna. I used that in a phrase, so it'll be Team Detweiler from now on. But Donna's husband, Jeff, is the Executive Director for Broadcast Business Development. Jeff, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Now, it'll be Teen and Teen, and Elaine Jones has already said hello to both of you, so I'll just pass those greetings along. I'll be reading the questions. Speaking of that, we get ahead to our housekeeping screen. If you're not familiar with our webinars, your GoToWebinar interface has a place where you can type in questions. It's also got the little hand wavy icon. If you click on that, and we may unmute your mic and bring you on board and make you part of the conversation. More the merrier. We try to do these roundtable style, so your participation is not only requested, it's required. Otherwise, it's going to be off. Well, I mean, Donna and Jeff will be interesting. I'll be awful boring. So we don't want to go there if we can avoid it. Remember, too, that the Nautel webinars do qualify for half of a credit for recertification if you're an SBE member under Category I of your research schedule. You go to the shiny new SBE website. If anybody is an SBE member and hasn't been to sbe.org recently, the new website got released last week, I think. Notice our president, Wayne Pacina, is in the audience. So Wayne, tell the web team, great job. The new site looks excellent. All right, one other thing that I forgot to mention, and a person I forgot to thank, was Mr. Disembodied Voice himself, Edward Sylvester. Ed is the marketing genius that really works hard behind the scenes to make all this stuff happen. So Ed, thank you for that. Now, you'll also notice that Ed's profile picture on the title page changes every week, and the first person who guesses who it is correctly will get a swag kit. Somebody had guessed it was a young Bill Murray, and it was not Bill Murray. So we'll have to see. Oh, William Harrison, I think he's going for a 3 for here. Grateful Dead drummer Bill Kreutzmann. Very good, William. Thank you for that. I know Ed was mentioning he's got to get into the office and get on top of the swag kits, so those should be going out. We'll get started on that right away. Moving on. This is the same agenda slide we've had for every one of these. I leave them in now just because I think I've come to expect seeing them. But we'll talk amongst ourselves, and we'll talk with you folks and see if we can't get some ideas, comments, suggestions, get some stuff going back and forth. We're going to talk a lot about licensing because it's one of the things that comes up anytime anybody posts anything about digital radio. It'd be, oh, licenses. And we're going to get some clarification on that from the folks that know. And I'm going to bring up a specific situation that came up for me too. So we'll have some fun. William says he's going to stop competing. No, don't do that. I mean, it makes it part of the game. It's awesome. So, you know, first in, first, the challenge is going to be for Ed. He's going to have to come up with a different swag kit for you every time, so you don't end up with like 85 of the same thing. But that'll be a whole different thing. So what we're talking about is how the cost has come down. And I don't know, the Team Detweiler, I'll let you guys pick who you think would handle this slide best, but bring it on.
Well, I think either one of us can probably address it, but since I've got at least more history, I'm going to suggest that we go back to around 2002. The hardware costs for HD were about $45,000 for the encoding equipment. That didn't include the transmitter or any of the ancillary equipment. And so it was a very expensive and, quite frankly, a science project back in those days. We move up into 2008. Costs came down with Gen 3. That platform was built on DSPs and worked quite well. Once again, added reliability to the system, but it really was still a fairly expensive system. And now as we move into 2017 and beyond, Gen 4 came down quite a bit. I think we're around $12,000.
I'm going to nip the next comment, and I haven't seen a comment yet, but it comes up in every time you see the comp or the discussion come up online. Somebody will mention, but DRM's license free and you don't have to pay the big license fee. And yes, but I recall there's some codec costs buried into the hardware price in that system. And I know going back to the Gen 2 days when we were running about 45K for the HD gear, and this, again, it's going back to the very early days, but to put together a DRM system back then would be about $175,000, $180,000 in that range. So, you know, that gear now is down proportionately, so down to about 35, 40K, but that's relative to 10 grand to 12, 10 to 15, whatever on the HD side. So yeah, there has been a really big change there. And speaking of the licensing fees, I'm going to segue, and I know this is definitely Donna's bailiwick. So Donna, talk to me about license fees a bit.
Sure. What we can do is break this down like into three parts. One, the US and Canada, that's for the main license, the multicast and royalties, and then licensing outside of the US and Canada. And yes, we'll do AM all digital too. And one of the interesting phrases, I was just thinking about this moments ago and talking about how things were in the past and what things look like now. During one of the NAB sessions, Rashad Tabakawala, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but he said, the future does not fit in the container of the past. So forgetting all that you thought you know, and let's just start fresh. So if we start by looking at the commercial FM station license, first, note that the station class and market size aren't factors in the pricing. All the stations in a given category pay the same rate. Now, the current one-time license fee for a commercial FM station is $10,000. At that point, stations have the option to pay that as a lump sum or use a payment plan. The payment plan allows stations to pay $2,500 down, then spread that remaining $7,500 over 5 years. And that's with payments of $1,500 a year. There is no interest fee, there's no carrying cost involved. And if you choose to pay by the lump sum option, the fee is only $9,000. So right off the top, you save $1,000. Now, this includes the license, the main channel in perpetuity. And of course, the digital simulcast of the analog signal automatically becomes your HD1 signal. Now, we'll cover multicast separately on that. The commercial AM stations, that license fee is a one-time fee of $7,500. And again, you can do the same 5-year no interest payment option with $1,500 down. And that comes to $1,200 a year. Now, the technology doesn't currently permit multicasting on the AM, so there's no additional fees for multicast there. For a non-commercial station, the license fee is a $5,000 fee, and that's payable with $2,000 down payment, and the remaining $3,000 over 5 years, and that comes to $600 a year. Again, no interest or carrying charge involved. And LPFM stations, they're a $5,000 fee with the same payment options as non-commercial stations. However, unlike full power stations, there's no ongoing cost when the station adds the multicast channels.
Sorry, I get a little carried ahead and had myself muted.
So in the next slide, we can take a quick look at the multicast. And for multicast, that's the ongoing cost is a multicast fee. And this is for the commercial FM station. And the multicast fee comes into play when the station adds an HD2, HD3, or HD4 channels. And each multicast channel costs the greater of either $1,000 a year or 3% of the incremental net revenue generated solely by that channel. And to put that another way, until that multicast channel generates over $33,333 annually on its own, all the station would pay is $1,000 minimum, and that's billed at $250 a quarter.
And that the revenue on that is that self-reported, or is there an audit trail set up for that?
The station self-reports on that. They get this cute little form that comes in the mail to them. They fill it out and say, I made over $33,333. Here's the number, or didn't even come close to that. Here's my $250, and it's done. And for non-commercial stations, the multicast and data fees, they are $500 a year per additional channel. That's instead of $1,000. And NPR stations, if they're CPB approved, we can waive the quarterly multicast fee and possibly even the basic license fee if the station qualifies. So if you're a CPB station in good standing, please reach out and we should talk, because you might have a free license coming your way.
We're good. I do have a question. What about for those stations that put their AM on HD2? And I'll quantify that because I know Marco's in Canada. So think of it from the Canadian perspective.
So from the Canadian perspective, although it's, as I understand, the same for the States as well, multicast channels will be treated as far as the minimum cost per year. So $1,000 per year for commercial FM. There is no incremental addition as far as incremental revenue if you're rebroadcasting an AM. It's considered a broadcast. Now, if you went out and because you had that on the HD2 channel and you were charging more for your advertising, that would be incremental revenue. But typically speaking, they're going to spin it the same, and there's no additional charge.
So in that case, it's basically treated like a fill-in booster then.
Correct.
The advantage to that too, from a logistical point of view, is that if it's a fill-in booster under FCC rules, you can direct drive it with audio instead of using an off-air pickup. Yes,
that is correct as well.
So I'm on a roll here. Look at this. And a question from D. Ramos: with the FCC ready to okay all digital AM broadcasting, will AM multicast be allowed? You see
So
me,
as I
you know why I'm smirking.
Well, the interpretation we understand is that the FCC said as soon as there are AM receivers that will do multicasting, they will consider that possibility. And so they, at this time, have ruled it out because there aren't receivers capable of doing AM multicast. But as soon as there are, they would consider that.
Now, in the case of Radio 1, WTLC in Indianapolis, they did approve MA2 as an experimental mode, but they specifically wouldn't allow them to put a translator on it because, as you said, of course, there's no receiver that can pick up the HD2 on AM at this point.
Correct. So they're happy to allow broadcasters to multicast, but they don't want to open the door yet for translators to be fed by those multicast channels on AM.
Right, and I assume that's, well, for two reasons. The big one being, of course, that there are no receivers, and two, because it is experimental, it's always subject to change, and if we decide we don't like how it's working, it's easy to make it stop be a thing, and that could be a real quagmire for the FCC.
Agreed.
I just wanted the chance to use the word quagmire in a sentence, and there, my day has been fulfilled already. Moving on really quickly, Donna's got some stuff on international licensing as well.
Sure. On the international, the license fee is collected by the manufacturer or their agent on behalf of Xperi. For these, there's the one-time station license, the HD1 license fee of $67.75, and that's US. And if they are going to intend on multicasting, If they purchase an importer or combined importer-exporter system, there's the separate one-time multicast fee of $4,000. And again, that's collected by your manufacturer or their agent on their behalf. It's a different license, but it's all handled separately on the international program.
And all of those, in the case of international, are a one-time fee. So the main channel and the multicast is one time. That's it. They're done. And in the U.S. and Canada, the main channel fee is a one-time, as Donna had mentioned, and multicast fees are the only things that are ongoing.
So Jeff, I'm going to throw this at you, and I'll try to be tactful and careful about my wording. But you've been around since the early days, almost. I think you've been tied to what was it, Xperi, then Ubiquity, and going back even further than that, correct? To the ADR days.
Yeah, US ADR. Yeah.
Yeah. So what led the decision to make some of them one-time fees and some of them royalty-based, like recurring fees? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, I think from a business perspective, businesses always like to have recurring revenues. It always looks better on the bottom line that someone is continuing to pay you for that. Internationally, it's much more difficult because we don't have that direct relationship with the station as much as the manufacturers do. So it became, I think, a logical extension to have the manufacturers or their agents handle that part of the business relationship. If you go back really far, the main station license fee back in the days of Ubiquity was around $25,000. So things have come down as we talked about cost reductions here. We have the reduction in the station license fee. We have the reduction in the equipment costs, and because of technologies like HD Power Boost, you now have reduced operating expenses. And I know we've talked in the past, the transmitter series that are produced today can produce a -10 HD signal, probably with less power consumption than the tube amplifier they had a couple of years ago. So
that's a good segue into the next slide, because that's exactly what I was discussing. It's like you'd seen this before. And for the folks watching at home, we did do a run through of these earlier today, but we did it in the space of about 30 seconds. So as he saw it, it was just flashing by. I'm going to credit your memory for that one. But yeah, this is an NV20 circa 2007, 2008. So that was our second generation of HD capable transmitters after the V series. And then the GV, which is our current production. And as you can see, as an example, if you look at the NV20 running in HD at -20 dB injection, you can run a GV at the same TPO with 10 dB injection. So, 10 times as much digital power with the same overall efficiency. So yeah, I mean, I've had cases where customers have taken out Gen 1 gear running a tube box at -20 and put in a solid state box running -10 and seen the power bill go down significantly. Or if you're replacing an analog grounded grid transmitter. So yeah, another example. The hardware costs have gone down a little. The efficiency and the power consumption have gone down a lot. Okay, here's a question from Bob Wyatt. If you're replacing a transmitter from a currently licensed system, so you've got a station, it's already licensed, it's broadcasting HD, you're putting out a new transmitter or putting in new gear, are there any hidden license fees buried in there? And I think the short answer is no for North America anyway. Yeah, it's covered separately. Is that correct?
Yeah, there would be no need to do anything like that. Now, if you switched it from your current FM station, maybe you have another one in your group, you're going to take it out of this market and move it to a different one. We just have to do a license transfer paperwork. There's no additional charges involved if you're moving them around within your group equipment-wise. But
okay,
and the license transfer.
And the license is by call sign, yeah? So like if you've got a standby or a backup transmitter, completely separate HD system within the same site, or a totally different one at an aux site. And William Harrison's asking this, but that one license per call sign, correct?
It's attached to your facility ID.
Okay, good. One other question that I've had come up, a few people have asked recently. You've currently got a waiver on the MA3 on all digital for AM. What's the long-term plan for that with it being on the FCC docket now?
Well, as of right now, there's currently no charge for that license if they go directly from analog to all digital.
Or a mandate to convert.
That's a big deal.
So there's presently no mandate to convert that station. So you can get the license now, but it does apply only to MA3 operation, not MA1. So you can get the license for MA3, put it on the shelf until you're ready to go, and you'll be able then to turn it on at the time when you see fit.
There's no reason not to do that.
Right. And Chris Hayes notes that I worded it as one license per call sign, and maybe I should have worded that differently, but it's one license per licensed radio station. If the call sign changes, that doesn't require, does it require a license, like a paperwork change, a license transfer?
It's nice to do an addendum that just says we've changed our call letters to such and such. Just it keeps it neater when, if you go to sell the station later on, it's neat and clean, but it's attached to the facility ID.
And if that information is sent in to us, we can update our records and the website so that we have current information. But it's not required, but it's encouraged.
Let's see, and Jerry Olson says, I think I've talked with Jeff about this previously, but oops, there I go, scrolling beyond my ability to keep up. There we go. I think I've talked with Jeff about this previously. We purchased excess licenses through CPB a few years back. We're unable to actually implement those at the time. Can those licenses be kept on the shelf for future HD stations? And so that would be a question.
Ask that one again.
Okay. Let's see, purchased excess licenses through CPB a few years back. So you remember when the CPB had done I think that's when the commercial fees first were, or the non-com fees were first brought down. But they were unable to actually implement those licenses at the time. Can they be kept on the shelf for future HD stations?
I think as long as they qualify for the CPB, yes.
I don't believe there's a deadline to convert. We'd have to look back at the contract on that. If you want to just reach out independently, we can just verify that all is well with them.
Okay, so there you go, Jerry. So Jerry, just grab a screenshot when we get to the end of the slideshow. I will have Jeff and Donna's contact information up there. Throw Donna an email and she'll be able to set you up on that one. Moving ahead a little bit, Rick Jesse wants to know, talking about that MA3 license, the waived fee MA3 license, say that 5 times fast. So how do they go about obtaining that? Is there an application form?
There's an application form, and if you just send me an email with your call letters, I'd be glad to put it in your hands and complete and return. It's as simple as that.
Very good. Let's see. So license fee is the same for the same facility ID. Aux sites can be elsewhere with a different facility ID. Need another license. And the short answer for that was no. So, and I'm going to pick just a call sign, but if I've got KABC with a main and a standby transmitter at this site, and then an aux at a totally different site on the other end of town with a different facility ID, that's still one license, correct?
Correct.
So there you go, Bob. Now I am going to unmute. Let's see if he's actually here and paying attention. We've got a customer in the audience who just turned on HD recently, so we can get his thoughts on it. Mike Martin, you got a microphone nearby?
Yes, I do, and I just got myself unmuted there.
I'm gonna say, when you mute and unmute, I'm watching you go red, green, red, green. It was like watching the Red Green Show, you know, looking for a roll of duct tape. So you guys just turned on a VS2.5, and you're with Winona State University.
That is correct. We are here in Minnesota.
So they're over right on the Mississippi River. I know that area down US 61 fairly well. My wife, when we met, was living in Red Wing, about half an hour north of there, maybe an hour if you drive slow.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful country, no doubt about it.
So how's the HD going for you guys? I mean, and understanding that you've had it on for all of what, 24 hours now?
We switched it on Friday evening, and it sounds amazing. We've gotten some really good reports on it. The one thing I really love about going HD, most car radios now, FM radios, have very poor stereo separation, and they will in fact blend to mono in anything less than a strong signal area. But with the HD signal, there is no blending to mono. It is full stereo separation, and it's just great to hear that as you're driving around. And we've gotten reports too. We're only running 900 watts TPO, and we've gotten reports of people picking us up solid HD lock-in 20 to 25 miles out. So we're very happy with the coverage as well.
Bob Goff says, "Go WSU Warriors." So
That's
I guess
right.
You've got a fan there. Bob's over in Wisconsin, not too far across the river and a little bit north.
Awesome.
So that's good to hear, Mike. Now, I know you are sort of the chief cook, bottle washer, engineer. You fill many positions there. How did you find the setup? And there's something else that we've worked really hard at simplifying over the years from the first iterations. I know Jeff will remember the very first reference series and what it took to configure those, and we swore at you more than once.
Yeah, it was painful.
Actually, it wasn't bad. We ran into more problems with our situation here at Winona State. Being a state university, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and we started this process in May already. And and Donna, we went back and forth on a lot of things. We had to get university legal involved and had to go up to the state office in St. Paul, blah, blah, blah. We'd go weeks at a time without hearing anything, so that's a separate issue. From the Nautel side, from the equipment side of things, really, really good manuals. Everything worked fine. Turned it on and there was no smoke, no fire, no sparks. It just turned it on and it worked. So we're very happy with that. The only issue we're having right now yet, as I said, I just got this thing fired up over the weekend. So now we're starting to tweak things a little here and there. Need to get song artist metadata working and things like that yet. But we're just 99% done with this project.
Good. And I'll address that in a couple of minutes too, because that brings me to a point that we'll hit later on. But thanks for that, Mike. I really appreciate the input.
You're welcome.
So moving on beyond that, one of the other things that I've run into a few times, and Donna, you and I had talked about this literally 2 or 3 days ago. I mean, it was like one of the last things I did last week, which may or may not be because I don't work all that hard as the weekend gets closer. But we were talking about HD on translators, which is not a really common thing at this point. So can you clarify that a little? Because that is something that I expect to see come up a little more, but right now it isn't just something that you see all that often.
And there is a license for it, but the key to this is it on channel or is it off channel? If it's a booster on channel, there's no additional licensing required. But if it is different frequency as a translator, it does have its own license.
Okay,
and that runs the same as the LPFMs, which is it's the $5,000 license. Again, payment plans of the $2,000 down, and it functions just like an LPFM would, or non-commercial station. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I do have a request on how we can upgrade our 10-year-old NV5 transmitter to HD. And that's almost a support question, but it depends what exciter is in it, whether it's got the analog only. Well, the first generation exciter may need to be upgraded. If it's a second generation exciter, then it depends whether it was shipped with or without the X-Gen board. That can certainly be added. And after that, it's biasing the PAs, plugging in the HD gear, and away you go. So, and I make that sound also simple, but there is a lot of IT related stuff involved there. And that's one of the things that we've also been able to leverage. And Jeff, you've been, I know, peripherally involved in this as far as hearing a lot about some of the stuff that Philip has been playing with. But you know, the ability to leverage IP and virtualize some of this stuff is got to be a benefit for you guys as well, yeah?
We believe it's going to be essential to getting into the medium and smaller markets. First of all, the amount of engineering skill sets to do IT and you know, higher level system engineering are going to be somewhat limited in those markets. So having a system that is essentially plug and play is going to be very helpful having that. Certainly the cost aspects of as you get into systems as a service would allow this to be an ongoing operating expense versus a major capital expenditure. And we're looking now at you know, what can we do with the licensing along those same lines, where this can be, you know, a single monthly cost that the station can budget as an operating expense rather than having to make a capital equipment purchase. And it's early days, but you know, like many of these systems as they've evolved, it's been companies like Nautel who've done the innovation and a lot of the groundwork there in figuring out where are the areas that we need to bolster it. And I think you guys are making some great progress in that arena.
Well, thank you. Now, I haven't set this up with him before, but I see he's logged in, and all of this stuff that we have done was done in conjunction with a lot of input from our friends at Telos Alliance. And I see Kirk Harnack's in the audience, so we're going to unmute him and see if he has a microphone. I can't believe Kirk doesn't have a microphone nearby, so it's just a matter of if he's actually on a call or if he's able to respond right now. Kirk, are you there?
I am, Jeff. I've been watching for about the last 20 minutes or so. I came in a little bit late and have really enjoyed the conversation so far. Well,
and so this is something that Telos has developed, the Omnia, the Enterprise 9S, and I know it's a little out of your bailiwick, but I saw you in there and wondered if you could talk to that a little bit.
Well, we have this notion that more and more of the things that we do in broadcasting are certainly done on general purpose computing platforms, right? And I know I'm speaking with a broad brush and to an audience that's going, yeah, we know that. You know, I mean, 30 years ago, we were replacing cart machines with automation systems, right? And now we're at the point where we're replacing traditional purpose-built audio processors with computers. And in fact, most audio processors today have a computer inside them. They run on one, they're just put in a box that looks like an audio processor. Well, we've reached the point now where it's quite reasonable because of audio over IP and because of technologies like micro MPX, which lets you get, you know, FM composite at a real reasonable bit rate from one place to another. Because of technologies like these or techniques like these, it's reasonable to put the audio processing not only in a computer, in a server, in a virtual machine, on your own property, in your own private data center, or maybe in a what you might call a public data center like Amazon or Google. And so then at that point, it might become reasonable to combine the processing and the data manipulation to solve one of the biggest problems that HD has always had, and that's keeping the HD in perfect time alignment with the main analog signal. And I won't go much farther than that. I got to tell you, I don't understand it myself a lot farther than that. I got to tell you, if for those of you who may have seen some of the Nautel and Omnia webinars together, I got to go back and watch them again. It's like I understood it for about 20 minutes and I need to go back and make sure I got the concepts. So that's an easy thing to encourage people to do. If you watched it once, great. You probably need to watch it again. If you haven't watched it once, my goodness, go watch the replays of these webinars that we did to combine these technologies and solve some real problems.
Yeah. And if you go to our website, nautel.com, click the resources tab and click on webinars, the Tell Us Nautel webinars are separately linked on that page. The cool thing about it is if you've got an HD, and I'll pick our HD multicast, but if you've got a powerful enough platform, a big honking computer, basically, the gist of it is if you put your audio processor as a software device right on that machine, then you can split out for your analog and your HD. When you send them over the transport mechanism to the transmitter, whether it's wireless Wi-Fi bridge, whether it's fiber optic cable, whether it's some kind of hard link, no matter how you do it, because they're following the exact same path, there's no dither, there's no difference from one to the other. So it really tends to eliminate, because between the time the analog and the HD one are split into separate audio streams to where they're joined back together, it's a synchronous system. It's the exact same path all the way through. So yeah, it's not a matter of fixing time alignment. It's a matter of totally eliminating the need for time alignment correction, which, and Jeff, I mean, again, going back, this is something that we've talked about for years, was time alignment. And it is something that that you folks at Xperi actually do monitor in various markets, correct?
We do. We have the broadcast monitoring network, which allows Donna to get reports on what stations are out of alignment, and it's getting difficult to keep up with all of the stations there are in the markets these days. But as she has time, she communicates with them. But as you guys point out, if you're creating both the analog and the digital streams together, both processing and having coherent signals, there isn't anything else in the transmission path that's going to introduce a shift. And so if you create the signals together, they stay together, they will be broadcast together, they will be received together. As we started moving components around, and a lot of this honestly went back to the early days when everybody wanted to use what they had in place for the existing analog signal and just wanted to bolt on this digital component, it became very difficult to do that properly and synchronously, especially when you had independent STL paths. You had an IP link of some type where you were transmitting your digital signal, and then you had your AES STL transmitting your analog audio. It was highly unlikely that all of those packets were going to arrive at the same time.
Right. Excellent. Oh, and that you bring me to another question that that I hadn't really thought of, and so we don't have a slide relative to it, but this is probably more one for Donna. But what is the number of HD stations in the U.S. at this point?
Standing around the 2,500 number. I didn't check this morning.
So it is increasing on a fairly regular basis still.
It is,
Well,
and it's our multi.
Yeah, and as I say, as we just spoke to, I mean, Mike, they just turned theirs on at Winona State just the past couple of days. So growing daily. That's really cool.
As they grow and as the multicast channels come on, when stations notify us that they've added a multicast channel, we can then include them in the interactive station guide that we have at hdradio.com. And that's where consumers can go and look and see which stations are offering which programs in their market. A lot of times they're looking for a specific program, and they can go and see that, oh, it's on somebody's HD3 channel, and they're able to reference that right in their market.
Excellent.
Just checked our databases, 2,559 stations converted and 4,446 total digital channels on air.
That's out of ballpark about 16,000 stations in the U.S.
Something like 15.5, I think.
So well over a quarter. So it's still moving forward. I remember when it was measured, counted on this many fingers. So
And
yeah,
I think the latest numbers on new car sales, 52% of vehicles sold annually are coming with HD technology in them. And so that's on the order of about 10 million vehicles added each year.
Nice. And that's something that I've tell people the story. I just bought a new to me, well, I guess I bought it about a year and a half ago now, so it was new at the time, Silverado pickup truck with happens to have an HD receiver in it. And that's intriguing because, of course, I'm on the east coast of Canada, and our nearest HD station in this country is in Montreal. So that's about 800, 900 miles away. We may have to fix that up and get going on that. Let's see, got a request to show the last two slides. So I'm going to skip back real quick and see if Brian can grab a screenshot. So that one, Brian, you'll have to yell. Oh, there's one too. Chris Hayes has mentioned that 1070 in LA has turned theirs off. And so that's a good point, Chris. There have been a lot of AM HDs that have been shut off. And to be blunt about it, it's not always a situation, and I say not always, I'm not going to say every time because it's not every time, nothing's global, but in a lot of cases, the cause tends to be antenna system bandwidth. Anybody who, let's see, Jeff, you were engineering 30 odd years ago. You remember this thing called AM stereo?
I remember AM stereo quite well. I think I installed every one of the systems at one time or another on WHWH in Princeton, New Jersey.
And you remember what had to be done to optimize an antenna system for AM stereo?
Yes, quite a bit.
And there's not a lot of difference, really. It's one of those, I can't remember whether it's Carl Jones or Carl Smith. One of the Carls wrote a paper in 1958 about optimizing directional antenna systems. And if we'd been paying attention to that for the past 60 odd years, we probably wouldn't have the HD issues that we have these days.
Yeah, typically speaking, if the station wasn't operating in AM stereo, it can operate in HD.
Now, Chris does make a good point in the comments here that the main reason was the jarring when switching between HD and analog. And there's no question that, especially on AM, there's a very noticeable difference in sound quality.
Now, what I would recommend, if that was the reason, look at the core-only configuration and run parametric stereo. And you'll find that the performance differential will be much more palatable in the far field as you see blending. And that core signal goes much further than going from core to enhanced to point of failure and having that shift.
Okay, so they're good information right there. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, flipping ahead, so we talked about taking everything to software. And well, we talked about throwing it all in the one machine, throwing everything into the HD multicast or whatever your HD generator, whatever the big honking computer was. And from there, it was a pretty small step to virtualizing it. And that was something that Kirk had talked about. And when you've got, and we called it the Cloud Porter just because it needed a fancy marketing name and somebody smarter than me came up with it. But we discovered that you can virtualize the machine, load an Omnia 9 Enterprise on it, load all the HD gear on it, and then virtualize it, in our case with Amazon Web Services. In this particular example, we ran 4 instances. We just cloned the same Cloud Porter 4 times, twice in Ohio, once in Oregon, and once in Sao Paulo, and then turned on load balancing. The cool thing about it is that you've got built-in redundancy. I mean, and that's something that HD has always had a challenge with, because when you've got to spend X number of dollars for an HD multicast or X number more for the previous generations, it's hard to make the business case to have 2 of them, you know, a main and a standby. So this is one of those where virtualization could really help. Donna, have you played with this at all, or is this? I mean, just because I know you get stuck with the licensing questions these days.
No, I haven't had a chance to delve into this yet.
So that'll be the next big thing, I hope. And the cool thing is you could still you could do the best of both worlds, because as we all know so if you're ever hiking in the woods and you get lost, the best way to get found again is when you go into the woods for any reason, to go on a nature walk or whatever, grab about a 20-foot piece of fiber optic cable, coil it up and put it in your pocket. When you realize you're lost, stretch it out and lay it on the ground. And within an hour or so, a backhoe will show up to cut it. And at that point, you can follow the backhoe home. Anyway, so we all know it's the last mile. So I'm certainly not advocating virtualizing everything. Although you probably could, because these days it doesn't cost that much to put in a Wi-Fi bridge and have a redundant IP link as well. But certainly if you had your original hardware box and then virtualize the backups, you could do that potentially more cost effectively than buying 2 hardware boxes.
And if I could jump in a second, there's no reason that this can't run locally on your servers as well. It doesn't have to be in the cloud, but it does allow you to balance your exposure between the cloud and local servers.
Right. And the other benefit to it is that a cloud-based system will typically have enough of a safety mechanism built in that when, not if, one of the on-air hosts walks in, plugs the USB stick that they got from their used car salesman buddy, and jams it into the production computer to check out a listing, and then immediately infects the whole network with malware. Having cloud-based backups is not necessarily a bad idea. So yeah, there's like you say, more redundancy is never a bad thing. Now, there are a lot of, and this comes back to what Mike was talking about earlier, where they were working on interfacing some of the text features, the PAD, the program associated data. And Xperi now owns Arctic Palm, which is arguably one of the most popular systems for doing that sort of thing. Now, does the support for that still come from Arctic Palm, or does that come through Xperi now?
Well, it's all handled in-house.
See, I'm going to throw this at both of you and then just let you guys duke it out as to who answers the question.
The support is handled by the Arctic Palm support team. They are trained by our Stu Buck. Everybody knows Stu, and they are trained by Stu Buck, and the integrations he's worked with them on. So you wouldn't contact Xperi directly. You would go through the support, Arctic Palm support at Xperi.com. There's a whole web portal that you can go into for support on that. So don't call Stu on his personal cell phone or anything like that, because he's retired. He's enjoying retirement right now, and in his fast cars.
And he'll still answer that call.
Yes, he will, but let him enjoy retirement. So go through the Arctic Palm support from the website, and they can help you with any of the ticketing issues there.
And one of the cool things that when you sent me the slide, I looked at it and I said, well, the DTS is connected radio. That's all the dashboard stuff in my car. HD radio, of course, is the technology that we all know and love. Arctic Palm is the reason. So you folks are covering a lot of stuff from literally one end to the other of the chain.
I think I would characterize it as we're trying to make a relevant radio solution easier to put together. Whether your presence is over-the-air HD radio broadcast, a great experience on the DTS connected radio, which is bringing over-the-air broadcast and IP together in the center stack, or all in media, which is an apps-based business where your station can have its apps presence, or Arctic Palm for being able to bring the middleware together with Q Interactive for album art and commercial images. All of these are important tools that I believe the broadcasters need to have and be able to use easily. And as you had mentioned, we're simplifying things. We're trying to get to pre-configured in as many areas as we can. And we believe that's better for the broadcast industry, because nobody has time anymore to do all of that testing and experimentation on your own, as much as broadcast engineers would like to be doing that. But
so I had a customer come to me down in Utah, and he has been involved with HD since about 2004. So some of the early generation stuff. And he just, for another station he contracts, just put in a GV 7.5 with the HD gear. And he's not in the audience today, or I'd holler him up. But one of the things he mentioned, because of course now the code has, I think, 16 presets for bandwidths and different configurations, whereas before you had to go in and manually set everything. And he said it's just so much simpler that he literally called me to tell me more than once how simple it was to set up compared to what he was used to from the first generation. So, and that comes back to what we were talking about before with reducing costs, because it's not just the physical cost of the hardware or the licensing fees for the software, but the time to install it and optimize it and make it work. I mean, my running joke setting up AMHDs always used to be that when I was in field service, I could install an AMHD system in 3 hours. And then it'd take me 3 days to dial it into the antenna system and get it to work right. And so that's, you know, those improvements really need to be, I guess, not augmented, but brought to light as well, because y'all have done amazing work there. So thank you for that.
For those who aren't familiar with what Jeff's talking about, the configurations now not only configure the channel bandwidths, but also the multi-port synchronous asynchronous client, known as the MSAC. The MSAC is how data gets into the system for images and the program service data. So all of that can be done by just selecting the right configuration now, and all of the bandwidth and all of the MSAC configuration is done.
Yeah.
Saving hours of pain.
Well, and we used to get a lot of calls, and we still do get a few. Somebody will have a earlier generation importer, and they'll be like, we want to put the artist and song title on. And it's like, okay, you need to load JAMSAC. What's that? And then it started. And yeah, so having that automatic, again, it's just one step removed. Well, one very big step removed from the process. So yeah, it's greatly appreciated. We are running close to the top of the hour. Let's see, just double check on the questions and comments. I see something else, personal experience. Right, okay, so that's talking again about the AM in LA, that multipath is the big issue with switching too. And that's actually, that applies to FM as well. If you've got an area where you've got severe multipath and analog, while the HD can be more robust, it's still going to blend more frequently in a multipath prone area. So yeah, you can't defeat the physics. Now, this comes back to, and Jeff, you, from the engineering side, I'm going to nail you for this one, but it comes back to an extent to channel bandwidth, whether you're talking FM or AM. The antenna bandwidth has a huge impact on multipath. Yeah, I'm going to throw them in front of the. You see that light? That's the train.
Well, I mean, OFDM is going to be much more resilient to multipath, and the ability with having dual sidebands. You know, we sometimes compare ourselves to other digital technologies. One of those other digital technologies only has one digital sideband, and as a result, if there is multipath fade that occurs over that partition, that digital signal goes away. With HD, you've got redundant sidebands, and they're spectrally inverted. So if you look at the information that's close to the analog, if my head's the analog signal and I got the sidebands on either side, this one is flipped so that the digital information closer to the analog signal on that side is on the outside, on the other sideband. So you never lose the information, and you can have quite a bit of multipath fading and you know, channel impairment going on that you'll be able to ride through. And that's, you know, that's true of both the AM and the FM system.
Right. Chris Hayes says he wants to talk to you more offline about that. So I've left the slide up there with all your contact information. You can expect that phone call anytime. For what it's
Sounds
worth,
good.
Chris, I think Chris, let's just double check. Chris, do you have a microphone with you? I see you're typing a lot in the text, so I'm going to see if I can scroll up and unmute you. We'll bring some of it online just because it's an interesting conversation, and it's engineering talk is never, well, I guess it depends who. Oh, Chris is on a dial-in, so I'll try to unmute you, but Chris, it's
Apparently it works on the phone too. I just learned that.
there you are. Hey, how are you doing? So you're retired mostly these days, yeah?
Yes, I'm mainly retired these days, so that's the way that works. I was just going to comment. LA is almost the worst case from all the past because of all the hills and overhead power lines. When I was doing KRLA, and Jeff will remember because he commissioned it, I believe, on
A
KRLA.
million years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that antenna was extremely broad. It was done with a program that sadly is no longer available by Dr. Bingham at Continental, where it iterates overnight and finds the best possible adjustment, not only for the main lobe, but for the back lobe and the suppression. So it's insanely broad. So it's not an antenna issue. But I have had the AM fall apart driving away from the transmitter about 2 blocks. It's because of power lines. A lot of RF energy in the power line doesn't arrive at the same time as the RF energy from the antenna. There's a problem there, and it will cut out even then. And I think I think if you want to really know the reason a lot of AMs are getting turned off, it's because there's a lot more switching than we'd like to see, and it is jarring. Now KNX did something interesting for a while, which is not necessarily Xperi approved. Excuse me. Forgive me if I keep saying iWikity. It's just been so long in my head, but they actually let their analog audio go out to 7,500 hertz. Continuing the wider band audio sounded much better. Of course, their talk, but of course we know that will tend to make switching worse because it will tend to bury some of the inner carriers. But it's a problem with the AM system, and it's when it's working, it sounds pretty good. Although I would like to talk to people about processing for HDAM because some people don't understand processing for slow bit streams, and things are sounding worse than they need to. Anyway, taken enough time. Thank you for the forum here and the very interesting presentation, by the way.
Well, thank you, Chris. I greatly appreciate it.
Jeff, I don't know if I have time to answer some of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
But the AM system has a couple of things that it's going to be impacted by. Grounded conductive structures. So that's power lines, bridges and tunnels, things that are going to affect and actually invert the RF spectrum as you go through that process. And the receivers just can't track through that signal. And so that's part of the problem. The other issue is in the nulls, the suppression. If the carrier, if it's not suppressing the analog carrier perfectly and it's on part of the sideband, you're impacting on the durability of that signal. So where the nulls fall in relationship to the analog signal also affect that. I remember that at WJW in Detroit, and we had a number of issues there. It was ultimately solved. The core-only configuration can ameliorate most of these things, and if you guys don't have details on that, I can certainly provide it. I'm not trying to necessarily encourage anybody in that direction, but if that's something that you want to experiment with, it is a way of resolving some of those problems.
And that is a good point, that there are a lot of configurations that can overcome different things. And I know we've talked about just on MA3, for example, core only versus enhanced mode. Some of the older transmitters, ours, other manufacturers, whoever, you may only be running a core only broadcast. You may not have the ability to do the enhanced mode. So that is something, definitely talk to your manufacturer about stuff like that for sure. We have hit the top of the hour, so I will do the mandatory where to find stuff. This webinar, as with all of our webinars, will be archived for posterity. I did not ask Jeff and Donna for their permission beforehand, but it's implied as soon as they said, sure, we'd be happy to do this with you. So by all means, you can go to the resources tab on our website, hit the webinars button. You'll find all kinds of stuff there. The Nautel Waves newsletter, I believe one just came out fairly recently. I always look for material for that because nobody should have to listen to me blather on my own for more than a couple of seconds. So certainly go there, and the YouTube channel where you can find that, as well as things like customer service how-to videos, little things like how to set up your HD multicast or whatever have you. So on that note, I just want to drop a very big thank you to Donna and Jeff Detweiler for coming by and spending the time with us today. It was greatly, greatly appreciated. And thanks for the info.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
And on that note, folks, thank you all very much for spending your time with us today. And we will see you hopefully next week. I think we're talking about more cloud-based stuff. Have a great day.